some sections under my minutes because there are other calls I had to do, so sincere apologies. But my name is Jacob Johnson Attakpah. I work as the Zero Cities Project Manager at GAYO. Very recently project director, but yeah, project manager at GAYO. And the work that we do at GAYO spans from several places. So we work on climate action, work on circular economy, we work on disaster risk reduction, community resilience. Several projects span across, and one of those projects is the Zero Waste project that I manage. There's the water for adaptation and period poverty, I beg your pardon, that's up north. Several projects. But today we're going to talk about why those of us in this room are in the room. And the reason why we're all here is because of air pollution. And many of us will know that it's one of the biggest crises that we're facing in Accra. So when you're using focusing in Sawam Road, when you're using even Kaswa, the Accra Kaswa Road, the hours of 4 to 7 p.m., you can feel the heat. And many times it's not just the heat, it's also the fumes. And so many issues, many situations, and then Francis even spoke about the routes from campus to Ibri. So there are many issues of air pollution, but particularly if you go to a landfill at home, for example, before it was decommissioned, you can also feel the air pollution in the air. So there's a lot of issues when it comes to air pollution, and it's one of the major sustainability issues that we have in Accra. Then there's you in the room, or let's say us in the room. We make up about 57% of Ghana's population, young people, and that's more than half. And so if today half of us, or half of Ghana's population was going to be gone, most likely the 90th percentile is going to be at the older people level, which means that those of us here will have to grapple with the problems that we're facing for, say, 3 or 4 decades from now. And what this session is going to do is to unlock your thinking in a certain level, beyond being run leaders, or beyond being people who work on. So it's going to activate your thinking in a certain level, beyond the fact that you are run leaders and beyond the fact that you're going to be working on air quality issues within Accra. It's beyond that, because the data that you get, and Lord was talking about the precision advocacy model, I believe we have spoken about already. The data that you get is not going to sit in your app, it's not going to sit on your laptop. It has to be used for something, and that's to influence policy. So it's going to activate your thinking in a certain level of how to use the data that you have to be able to influence policy and how to do that. Now let's talk about urban sustainability a bit more. It speaks to generally balancing development with environmental and public health. And one of the issues that we're facing when it comes to environmental and public health is the urban growth. And so you can see that Accra is bursting at the seams. Previously, Kaswa used to be part of Accra, but now it's even closer to the center of Accra than it is closer to Cape Coast. Talk of places like Mayarifa, Ashi, whatnot. All those places have now become essentially Accra because there are people living there, working in the middle of Accra. And the urban sprawl is one of the biggest problems that we have. And the thing with urban sprawl is that it also comes with mobility. And people have to move. For example, if you live, I don't know where you folks came from, but if you live in Kaswa and you were coming here today, by some way, somehow, you had to leave Kaswa and get here. Bicycle, motorcycle, car, maybe some of you teleported. But almost every other means of transportation gives us a certain level of emissions. And that is where the air quality part comes in. And that refers to the condition of air in relation to how clean or polluted it is. Some of the markers that you can use to check whether air is polluted are particulate matter, the very common ones. Ones with nanometer of 2.5 or 10, there's NOx, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, ozone, carbon monoxide, the very black fumes that come from the Trotskys that apply the thermostation route. And then there's one that I didn't include here, which is methane. And methane that also comes from the putrefaction of organic waste at landfills. So air quality, if it's good, means that it contains very low levels of these pollutants, making it safe for humans but also the environment. And poor air quality occurs when pollutant levels are high enough to cause health problems, especially upper respiratory tract infections like the issue that Francis spoke about, the oversecretion of mucus and by the mucous membrane. Air quality is also a cross-cutting issue because there's a health part, which is the upper respiratory tract infections I spoke about. There's an economic part because then when you get sick from asthma, late onset asthma and all that, you have to sit at home, you can't work. And then there's a climate part where these things sometimes induce more heat and cause the urban heat effect that people felt. Is it 4 or 5 months ago in Accra? And there was 4 or 5 months ago where Accra was very hot, and that was the urban heat effect. For all these problems, there is a solution, but in order to get to that solution, there's a very big gap. And that gap is the context of air quality means that there's a big difference between the urgency of the problem and the amounts of public pressure being placed on decision makers to solve it. So this is what it looks like. Air quality is a serious issue. We've said all the things it affects, but most people are unaware. And the reason why they're unaware is because it is blind to the eye, or the eye is blind to it. So, and I always give this example of how urgent the COVID crisis was with the climate crisis. With the COVID crisis, many of you remember that we had a daily count on the number of people who were infected and who died. So we could see the mortality rate, we could see the people dying. So everybody said, let's work on it. Social distancing, wear a nose mask, whatever. When it comes to air quality and even the climate crisis generally, we are failing to count or put a certain quantitative data to the lives that are affected by it. And so, for example, when there's flooding, we don't call it a part of the climate crisis. We just say, oh, there's flooding, X number of people died. But we don't quantify it aggregated in a way that people think about it as a big problem. So when you have upper respiratory tract infections like asthma and what have you, and even some cardiovascular diseases and what have you, people disaggregate that data. And so because the eye is blind to the data, we think, oh, it's just one of those things and like it's not a problem. And that's why like it doesn't feel urgent, because people are unable to quantify the data that comes with the kind of lives that are, or the number of lives that are harmed. And without any level of public pressure, policymakers and everybody will delay action. So I read in the news just, was it last night or this morning, that the public transport drivers who ply the Pokwase in Sawam road said that if the government doesn't fix the road, they're going to park their cars and not work anymore. Because they feel the pain when they are driving the car and they are bumping and hitting the road, they say that they are going to go on strike if the government doesn't fix the road. But when it comes to air quality, and when you take any of the air beam sensors that you have, and you measure the quality on the 37 Medina stretch, it will shock you the kind of spike you see. And EP has that data. So if you even follow EP on Instagram, they usually share that kind of data. And because people don't see that data, or that data is not public enough, there's no public harm around it. Galamsey used to happen a long time. But when our water started turning brown, then everybody said, okay, let's go and fight Galamsey. Because we can see that the water is brown. But for air quality, I mean, we can see the air here. It looks okay, so everybody's fine with it. So because it is invincible to the eye, there is not enough public pressure. And that's where the gap is. So we need a level of action to protect health and environment because it is a public good. Now, why you are going to solve that problem? The kind of roles that we play when it comes to policy influence, like several dimensions, right? There's the activity on the ground where people are harvesting air quality data. There's the one where people are engaging in, activations. For example, I know run leaders take part in the Millennium Marathon and whatnot, when they are UrbanBetter t-shirts, and so people know that there's something like that going on. There's a part where after all that is done, and then the data is analyzed, Lord here takes that data to the Ministry of Transport, to several local government authorities that I know about, and then he shows them that this is the state of air quality, you folks need to do something. So there's different things across the value chain that can be done. The first one is the direct advocacy and activism. Why you folks are here again today. It's because powerful advocates usually have the power, but also the audacity to be able to effect change. What that looks like is doing a lot of advocacy campaigns, whether traditional media, social media, or even rants, and doing that. But the second thing is that there's policy participation and consultation. So Lord and I, for example, have been in several rooms where we are saying X needs to be done about this, Y needs to be done about this. How do we do that? Because we're able to have data, we engage in activism, we know the lived realities. And so, for example, this is not a PowerPoint, but many times when I'm driving, I like to keep my windows up because I know the quality of the air out there. So I always keep my windows up so that I'm a bit protected. But it's because we know what the data looks like. So if you don't do your advocacy and your activism, you won't know what the data looks like, and you can't ask somebody to do something for you because you can only solve a problem, or you can only provide a solution when you know what the problem is. So the key sectors of these climate issues are research, data collection, innovation and solution, and then the impact representation. When you get the data, you need to innovate around it, let people know what the solution you are proposing is, and then finally, the impact representation, or the kind of impacts that you want done. Mobilization for change, and that's why for all the things that Lord has done here, when He asked me to, scout for other places that could hold the house, I didn't think twice in saying, okay, let's go to the GAYO office in Botswana and Uganda, because I've seen the kind of partnership that we've had, and somewhere last year, was it October or November, He graciously asked some of the run leaders to come and teach the environmental health officers in Accra how to check for air quality data with air beams. And so mobilizing is important. We don't work in silos, we work as a collective. So see it as movement building. Build a big movement around air quality. So yesterday, for example, I received an email from Clean Air Fund that says that, we're having all our grantees come together again for the second time in the year. And that's movement building, because we know that different projects are working on different issues when it comes to air quality. There's the waste part, there's the transport part, there's even source apportionment. We need to know where the air pollution is coming from so that we can address those things. And then you need to ensure that your actions are inclusive. So I see quite a number of women in the room. I'm happy about that, because there is many times gender and segregation when it comes to these kind of things. And so we need to do that. And then you also need to make your messages localized. When you are talking to people about air quality, for example, when you go to my hometown, you can't go and tell people, there's PM 2.5, there's PM 10. Because in my hometown, all the young people have left there. There's only old women and old men. Many of them who didn't go to school. So what does PM 2.5 mean to them? But when you tell them that, the smoke from using firewood to cook affects your health, that's more relatable. What it means is that if you localize your activism, the people understand it better, as opposed to telling them, there's methane, there's PM 2.5, and whatnot. And then think of sustained engagement. So not one-off activity. And so every year I know the run leaders, and I hope they say they do so too, in the marathons that happen. Every year they keep going, and that is to show that we are serious about this thing. We're not just doing it because today we don't have anything to do, but we're serious about the kind of message that we want to preach. And so I guess it's no strange that the areas that I'm speaking about are starting from waste. And because I work in waste, so there's zero burn or no burn pledges that communities can make and say, okay, we're going to stop burning our waste. So monitor and report illegal burning hotspots. So this is fun fact. In Accra, open burning is outlawed. It's shocking to you too, because you see a lot of people burn waste and you think it's normal, but it's outlawed. There's not enough monitoring and there's not enough enforcement of that law. And so monitoring and reporting illegal burn hotspots. And one of the ways you can do that is to use the app so that people can see it and try to take action, but also creative ways around reducing waste and upcycling and for all of those things. But beyond all of that, there's also the policy part, because all the work that we do as activists and whatnot ends up in policy, because if the policy doesn't change, what we're doing is in vain. And transport and mobility, Ninoy works on transform transport Accra. And the work that he focuses on is how to make Accra a more bike-friendly city. So many times when you tell people, ride your bicycle to work and all that, they say, what if a car hits me? And I recently had an intern, and it's a very legitimate concern, by the way. I recently had an intern from Germany, she was bemoaning the problems with biking in Accra. She used to live in Osu when it comes to office at Lakeside. And she said for that distance, it's something she could easily do with a bike in Germany. But in Accra, she's scared for her life, because there's the recklessness of the drivers, and then there's also no dedicated bike lanes that you can bike on. And so if she's riding at a place she thinks is safe, the car also thinks that they're entitled to that place. The motor thinks so too. And then she has to also compete with pedestrians who are walking at that same spot. And so it's a big challenge, because Accra is not bike friendly, or it's not green mobility friendly. And that's a big problem. So back to school or work campaigns. And again, you want to localize your activism. In a city like Accra, you want to bike to school. Fair enough. I won't visit you at the hospital, but fair enough. But when you go to my village and you want to bike to school, it's more reasonable there, because you don't have as many cars there, and then the roads are even better. The roads are better in my village. And you can do that. And you can do those things by making your messages localized. But when you come to Accra, you can then advise people to carpool instead of saying bike from Oyarifa to Accra Central. Carpool instead, so that we can reduce our emissions. And then there's citizen-led data collection on traffic emissions that I think CSIR is doing. They are the ones on social opportunity. Yeah. So they are doing that on seeing where the specific types of pollution are coming from. If this one is coming from car, this one is coming from motor, this one is coming from buildings, or this one is coming from waste. And then there's the social media that all of us are happy to use. How many of us are on TikTok here? How many of you have accounts on TikTok? That's a fair number in the room. You probably want to use TikTok because I hear that's where all the fun folks are these days. And then again, use that for policy influence by advocating for low emission zones and public transport expansion. I'm usually not political, but I think one of the most senseless things that we're doing is to expand the motorway into a 10 or 5 lane something. I think it's the most senseless policy that has come up in these days, because I don't think the problem with the motorway is the number of lanes. I think we have a bigger problem that we're not thinking about, how people move. Somewhere in 2008, 2010, we're told we're going to do the modal system of transport. You pick a train from here to here, you take a boat from here to here, you take a bike or bus from here to here. And somewhere after the former president passed on, God bless his soul, we don't know where it is again, where that plan is again. And that's a problem. Then there's urban sprawl, the lack of trees and dust from paved roads. That's the problem from urban planning. So there's Green My School, Adopt a Park. Yes, and I adopted a park in Kolokoti. So when you're going to Circle, just before you get to the Dubai, where Kwame Nkrumah is, there's a park there that I adopted that I take care of. And you can do that. You can go into the assembly and tell them you want to adopt a park. And they made me adopt a park. So there's tree planting tied to local air quality improvement data and public art installations showing the benefits of greening. And this is talking about smart cities and sustainable cities. And the policy influence there is to push for city ordinances that require urban greening. So a policy like Green Ghana Day, for example, was good. Just that I think it was not sustained well enough. It was a day, and then I think this year we didn't have it because it got cancelled. Then there's a policy engagement. So when you use all that data, you engage in policy with YCC, joint campaigns, and all of those things by ensuring that cities adhere to WHO guidelines. So how do you mobilize effectively? You need to define the goal. And I think that's one of the major things in the decision advocacy model again. You need to define the goal, identify the stakeholders, craft your message, choose the tactics on how you're going to deliver your message, and follow up and sustain. And I like using my village a lot. So imagine doing a TikTok live in my village. I mean, your viewers would probably be in Accra or something, but you wouldn't have the impact that is tailored to the message in the village, because there's not a lot of people using social media in my village. But if you're doing a TikTok live in Accra, specifically focusing on air quality in Accra, you do that. So choosing your tactic is very important in doing that. And again, work collectively, work with other people to make sure that you get to this goal. Then there's community mobilization and why it matters. So policy change is stronger when citizens demand it. So for example, who went on strike recently? I think it was the nurses, no? Yes. It was the nurses. They wanted more money. So when all of them said they would go on strike, they did it. So they started by saying, I think, OPD nurses go on strike. And a week later, emergency service nurses go on strike. What did the governments do? They went to negotiate with them and then they brought them back. It's usually easier when citizens demand it, as opposed to when you and I, who are also citizens by the way, but fall under a different scope as CSOs or youth leaders or what have you demanded. But if you had quite 1,000 number of people saying that we want air quality and we want air quality to be on the agenda, it's easier to get done than when you do it as individuals. So the mobilization must be participatory, so involve community in co-planning, co-creation, and when it comes to decision making, it needs to be culturally relevant. Always, don't forget about my village. It has to be collaborative, so partner with schools, local businesses, CSOs, or partner with even myself. And then you need to empower, provide tools and knowledge for self-driven action, so that if you are not there, people can still demand for the action that they want. Influencing policy on air quality. So there's quite a number of campaigns, and and this is a fun fact, 28,000 of the people that die annually in Ghana, is from air pollution. It's air pollution related. So participate in public consultation on environmental policies, like the Youth Connect, but the one we did at Lakeside. Utopia, sorry, not Youth Connect, Utopia. Participate in public consultations and on environmental policies like Utopia, submit position papers to the Ministry of Environment, engage with parliamentary committees on environment and health, and then couple that with the community-based monitoring. So contribute to air quality data by using the app, and not just using the app, but also talking to Lord and getting the MB minis from the office and use that to do your activation. Document the pollution sources in your neighborhood by again using the app, and then partner with research institutions to provide ground level data. Again, on policy, community-based, okay, this is the same slide, but engaging local governments, youth can influence policy by partnering in district and municipal assembly meetings. So there are several offices at the municipal level that can do with this, the environmental health, health promotion office, school health and education promotion, and several offices that are interested in this. So engage with them, and then you can do that. And then build strategic partnerships, so health organizations. So there's a group called Partnership for the Attainment of Health and Health-Related SDGs in Ghana. Partner with them because they'll be interested in this. Academic institutions like University of Ghana, and an office like AfriSet, for example, would be interested in working on air quality research. And even the Ghana Meteorological Agency, or GMET, Ghana Meteorological Agency, would be interested in working on air quality. And then there's the civil society organizations working on environmental justice, like GAYO. Policy influence on quality, on air quality, and this is probably my last slide. The key to this effectiveness lies in combining grassroots mobilization with evidence-based advocacy. So people within the community have to ask for better policies when it comes to getting air quality or getting good quality of air. But it has to come with evidence. So the people who are asking for it have to know how bad the problem is, and then they have to know what specifically they want. So if the air quality has proven to, PM 2.5 has gone way above the WHO levels, they need to be able to know what the WHO level before they know how high it's gone above that level. And you need to leverage Ghana's democratic institutions like the local government. So we have a whole ministry that's for decentralization, and building broad coalitions that include traditional authorities, religious leaders, and other influential community figures. And I always say this on my Zero Risk Project. There are people on the Zero Risk Project that they are not chiefs, they are not politicians, they are not anything. But, and I'm going to see one of them today, by the way. When they speak or when they say something, like the whole community agrees with them. Opinion leaders, if you want to call it that way, they are the, I don't know what to call them, but for want of a better word, they are the gangalia in the community. Whenever they say something, sorry?
Community influencers. I'm
Good.
also giving you a name.
Community influencers. But I prefer gangalia because it's more localized.
Sure.
So gangalia in the community, whenever they say something, that's for the community. And if they say no, everybody says no. They say yes, everybody says yes. They are not exactly politicians. They're just aura farmed over the years that now everybody listens to them. And these are the kind of people that you want to engage with when you're doing these things, because when they understand the problem, I mean, it's easier to, and the Bible says, when you strike the shepherd, the flock disperses. So it's easier to get to the shepherd and then ask him, these are some of the problems that you're facing, or these are some of the problems that you're facing, this is how we can solve it, etc., etc. And that is how you gain influence within the community. And so I'd like to hopefully bring my presentation to an end, and thank you very much for listening, and again, apologies for being late. I'm usually very much on time. Thank you. You can do better.
Thank you, Jacob, for sharing very important and vital information. I think I missed